Hi Realtors, this is Lindsay Hutto, your Chief Advocacy Officer at SCR. I'm coming to you live from the State House today to give you a recap of the 2026 legislative session. "2026 was one of the busiest and most complex sessions we've seen in quite some time. Lawmakers tackled a variety of issues ranging from roads, infrastructure, hemp beverages, DUI reform, among many others. One other factor that also shaped the tone and pace of the 2026 session was the fact that it was an election year. In an election year, the General Assembly tends to operate a little bit differently. The legislators' main focus is on issues that impact their voters back home. This creates both opportunities and challenges in the process. Some issues move at a rapid pace, while others are slowed down and pushed into future sessions. Another item to note, upon the regular sine die adjournment on May the 14th, the governor called the legislature back in immediately for a special session. The topic of this special session was congressional redistricting. The House quickly passed legislation dealing with South Carolina's congressional maps, while the Senate took a little bit more of a cautious approach. The Senate ultimately did not pass the bill due to timing, potential court challenges, military absentee ballots, and early voting already underway while they were discussing this topic. With all that said, there were certainly a fair share of political distractions and intense debates that created turmoil at the South Carolina State House. Through all the turmoil, SCR stayed focused on one thing: promoting policies that increase housing opportunities in our state. And because of that focus, SCR secured several meaningful legislative victories that impact property owners, homeowners, and the real estate industry as a whole. First off, H 4477, dealing with heirs property tax relief. This legislation helps families clear title to heirs property without triggering unfair tax reassessments, creating a more straightforward path to generational property ownership and marketability. Next, H 4270, dealing with eviction removal from the public index. This legislation addresses eviction record policies and housing stability issues. The bill allows for the removal of eviction records after 7 years from the public index. It ensures landlords have an adequate risk history, but the records do not follow the tenant around indefinitely. Next, S 831, dealing with DOT modernization. This legislation aims to modernize the Department of Transportation and address infrastructure and congestion concerns in the state's transportation system. The bill focuses on needed operational reform while separating out funding measures. Next up, H 3387, dealing with unlawful occupants of property. This legislation addresses the issue of squatters and provides property owners with an alternative legal remedy to remove unauthorized occupants. The bill clarifies probate issues and provides the court discretion regarding the structure of rent payments during an appeal, among other provisions. Next, H 3569, dealing with domestic violence in rental properties. This legislation amends the state's landlord-tenant laws to support residential tenants who are victims of certain domestic violence offenses. The bill allows protected tenants to terminate their rental agreements within 60 days of a documented qualifying incident without incurring penalties or fees typically associated with an early termination. Protected tenants must provide written notice to their landlord within the 60-day period and relinquish all legal rights to the premises. Next, S 853, regarding abandoned buildings tax credit. This legislation revises the state's Abandoned Building Revitalization Act to make the tax credit program more flexible and clear for rehabilitating abandoned buildings. Specifically, it would amend definitions so that a building does not need to have an income-producing use before abandonment to qualify. Next up, S 688, regarding the Small Business Tax Cut Act. This legislation aims to reduce property tax and administrative compliance burdens for qualifying small businesses. In conjunction with the act, the legislature also added an exemption related to business personal property tax for small businesses. The bill provides that a small business is permitted an exemption on the first $10,000 of net depreciated value of business personal property owned by the business. These new provisions become effective on July 1st of 2026. Last but not least, as of filming this video, the Conference Committee on the State Budget has not reached an agreement on the state appropriations bill. As many of you know, the Senate version of the budget contained funding for the homestead exemption expansion as passed by the Senate earlier on in the session. We will keep everyone apprised of the actions of the conference committee and both bodies as they return to take up the state budget in the coming weeks. Stepping back and looking at the session as a whole, one thing is very clear. Growth and affordability continue to be ongoing topics at the South Carolina State House. South Carolina's rapid population growth is certainly creating opportunities, but also putting pressure on existing infrastructure and housing supply. Legislators spent a great deal of time this session trying to balance this economic growth and trying to preserve quality of life for current residents. We expect these conversations to continue in the coming session and in future sessions, and want to ensure that realtors keep their seat at the table to help the state as they shape policy around these issues. At the end of the day, this legislative session reinforced why realtor advocacy matters. Every phone call, every meeting, and every relationship helps ensure that real estate professionals and property owners' voices are heard at the South Carolina State House. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to all of our members who stayed engaged throughout this legislative session and made these legislative victories possible. We look forward to continuing the fight for strong communities, property rights, and housing opportunities across our great state. And as always, thank you for allowing me to continue to be your voice at the State House. I look forward to seeing you all in the next legislative session.